Oh my goodness. Okay, I am so sorry that that took so long to get organized. I had just brutal amounts of tech challenges getting yeah, getting started. Um, but finally, all the settings are there and all the settings are ready, and I have a camera and I have a microphone, and I don't know if there are any of you here, but let's finally talk about bones and osteoporosis and exercise and movement. And these are kind of the three questions that I get most often. The first one is, what can I do and what can I not do? And I'm going to look at this from two different perspectives. One is there are these general recommendations. Oh, and if you are here and you have any questions, I think I can see the comments below, so I can answer your questions as we go. So the first perspective is there are various different organizations that are osteoporosis information, Osteoporosis Canada, Royal Osteoporosis Society. There are a variety of places that have laid out what they consider to be the appropriate guidelines for movement for people with osteoporosis. So those are general guidelines. And one of the things we need to remember is we are not all the same. So a general guideline is something to take under serious consideration, but remember that we're all a little bit different. So the current guidelines suggest that we should all be doing at least 2 sessions a week of strength training, with strength training including kind of the traditional arms, chest, shoulders, back, hips, legs. We should be doing at least 2 sessions a week of balance training. So balance and functional training. So that would be balance and agility and coordination, being able to reach for things without falling over, reducing your base of support. So that would be standing on one leg, doing things where something else is happening. So throwing and catching things, being able to do more than one thing at a time. Those are all balance considerations that happen in regular life. Functional training is anything that's kind of helping you to do your regular life, whether that's your daily life or sports or hobbies or activities. And examples for that are in and out of a chair, up and down from the ground. Many functional activities are also strength training activities and balance activities, so standing on one leg, being able to reach overhead. Those are all really good things that we want to be able to do all the time. And then there is the additional considerations, which different countries and different organizations put different emphasis on this. I really like the UK format currently, which is they focus on strong, steady, straight. So they also emphasize back exercises, postural exercises that help you to really be upright, help to combat hyperkyphosis, which is a forward curving of your spine. Forward curving of your spine can definitely destabilize your balance, puts pressure on the fronts of your vertebrae. Hyperkyphosis, or that forward bending, can be postural. It can be a result of muscle, I was going to say muscle weakness, but that's not necessarily the case. But the way your body works, right? And that can definitely be changed by strengthening your upper back muscles and getting much more length and openness across your front muscles. It can also be a result of compression fractures. So if you think of wedge fractures, here's a vertebra, and a vertebra is more or less the same height all the way across its body. And if this is the front of me, a compression fracture is a wedge fracture specifically is where the front of the vertebra has had these little multi-fractures, and now the front of the vertebra is lower than the back, and if you have those, that can gradually make the front of your spine shorter than the back, and that creates that curve. That's much harder to change, but certainly working your back muscles will help to mitigate some of that forward position. And then there is kind of all your other exercises. Osteoporosis Canada is in the process of updating their recommendations based on a new big conglomeration of studies that have been looked at to say about 150 minutes a week of other exercise. So that would be walking, jogging, running, hiking, biking, Pilates, yoga, Tai Chi, pickleball, tennis, skiing, whatever you do, right? Your other moderately vigorous activities, 150 minutes a week, which sounds like a lot, but actually works out to like 15 minutes a day-ish. So that's actually pretty achievable. But let's talk about the what should I be doing, and what do those things really look like, and where do the proportions lie? And this varies. Some people would say that the strength comes first. Osteoporosis Canada typically says the balance comes first, because balance exercises are strengthening exercises are balancing, but we know that working on everybody's balance starts to diminish after the age of about 40. So balance is really an important thing to work on for everyone, and particularly for us because of the higher consequences if we fall. And working on your balance is a pretty good predictor of not falling, and hence really decreasing your chance of breaking a bone. You can live with osteoporosis for your whole life quite comfortably without even knowing that you have it. If you never have a DEXA, you would never know unless you break something, unless you fracture something. So improving balance, coordination, and agility is a really good strategy for us. And so Osteo Canada tends to put that first as that balance and functional training. If you look at the guidelines now, they will say balance every day. Those are, I suspect, are about to change to make it a little bit more accessible in people's daily lives. So 2 sessions of balance training a week, where you are persistently growing your capacity. So you're making the exercises a little bit more difficult, a little bit more challenging. So if you can currently stand on one foot while holding just the edge of a chair, you would gradually want to progress to not holding the chair. And then you would want to progress to standing on one leg and doing something with the other leg. And then you would want to progress to standing on one leg while having somebody throw a ball at you, and you're catching and throwing the ball while standing on one leg over time, right? So you're wanting to make things more challenging as you go, so that you're continuously increasing your capacities. If you are already prone to fracture, you're always going to do this in a way that works for you. So you are going to be slower perhaps in your progressions. You're going to be more conscious of always doing it near a wall or a chair, or if you're really dodgy on your balance and you have wobbly ankles and a tendency to going over on your ankles or something, you can do your balance work standing in a corner so that you have 2 walls that you can rely on for support, which is super helpful. When it comes to strength training, there's a lot of information out there about strength training, and it can feel pretty overwhelming. So everybody can strength train. Everybody is able to work with weights. They can be smaller, they can be bigger. The key is that you want to be progressing your strength. So you could start with no weight. If you have been sedentary, or you're recovering from a fracture and you've been confined to bed or chair or wheelchair, if you have other conditions where your strength has been affected and you are starting from body weight only, that's great. You can progress from body weight only to 1 pound, to 2 pounds, to 3 pounds, to 5 pounds over time. If you want to use a resistance band and that feels like that's giving you effort, you can start with a resistance band. If you already have a weight practice and you've been newly diagnosed with osteoporosis, you can continue to use the weights you're using and gradually progress. It's about the gradual progression. So if you're looking at the current information that says strength training is really good for bone density and you're feeling a bit freaked out about it, it's okay. Take a step back. You can start wherever you are in your personal sort of fitness, health, endurance position, and you gradually grow with support from a professional. The thing about bone density is the combination of strength training and balance is really great. strength training and weight bearing exercises like walking, stair climbing, hiking, all that good stuff. This is not a guarantee that you're suddenly going to have perfect bone density. I wish I could say that that's what was going to happen, but it's not a guarantee. Everybody's bone density is different. Everybody's health history is different. For a lot of us, the reasons why we have osteoporosis are different. The way we respond to exercise is different. So across the board, the agreement now is strength training is good. Progressive strength training is the key. So that means gradually increasing your resistance and your challenge. But here's the thing. A lot of us have been for years, going to a fitness class, and we've been using a 1 pound, a 2 pound, a 3 pound weight. This is not enough. So if you're doing a class for the sake of doing the class, because it feels good, because it gives you energy, because it's got you nicely toned, whatever your benefits are with smaller weights, that's great. But for bone density, you need to be progressing always to bigger weights. So, as I said, if this is a 2 pound weight, and if this feels heavier than usual and feels like a challenge to you, it's a fine weight. This is not a bone density increasing weight for me. So we have to be mindful that when we're talking about I'm working with weights, 2 or 3 times a week, are you working with weights that are heavier than things you would normally use? The rule of thumb is you want to use a weight that's heavy enough that you can do 8 to 10 repetitions of your movement, whatever it might be, and that's it. You're too tired to do more with good form. And for us with osteoporosis, that good form part is particularly important. You need to be able to maintain control of the movement. But that at that 8 to 10, 12 repetitions, you're done. You need a break. That means that weight is heavy enough. If you can only do 2 or 3 or 4 repetitions, or you're losing your form, that weight is too heavy. So there are some details around this strength training stuff. And you can use different weights for different things. So you'll want smaller weights if you're doing, working with your deltoids. This typically is something where you would want to use a lighter weight. You can use much bigger, heavier weights if you're holding onto weights while you're doing squats or lunges or deadlifts, where the drive is actually coming from your legs and your hips. Okay, so I wish I hadn't been half an hour late, and I wish it was possible for more of you to be here live, because I'm sure there are questions. But as you go, put the questions down below. I'll be coming back and answering questions in the comments later after we're done here. So 2 balance and agility and functional training sessions per week, probably in the vicinity of anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes at a time, is going to be great. Strength training sessions, probably half an hour twice a week at least, in order to get a good solid workout. Don't have the endurance and the energy because you're dealing with some other condition that makes you tired. Do 15-minute sessions, do 10-minute sessions, maybe do 10-minute sessions 4 times a week. You can make this work in your brain, in your body, in your life, and it's going to be helpful. And then when it comes to the back training, again, the parameters are different. The Osteoporosis Canada guidelines currently, as they are right now, would say we want to be doing back exercises every day, 15 minutes every day, 10 minutes every day, somewhere in there. I suspect they're going to change that because I think most people find that a bit overwhelming. But honestly, getting 10 minutes of using the muscles in your back every day is not that hard to do. You can do it while you're sitting in a chair. You can do it while you're waiting for the coffee to perk. You can do it while you're watching TV or listening to a podcast. These don't need to be big, heavy-duty exercises. They can be, for sure. You can be using weights and bands and getting on the floor and doing all that stuff. But leaning up against a wall and fixing your ribs and moving your arms around is also a way to start moving your back muscles, and it's very helpful in terms of maintaining that strength in our upper back, which we so so want. So I would venture to say that was important. The additional things that don't happen in the kind of national organization rules about what we should and shouldn't do, I think we need to be working our feet regularly because that increases our agility, it increases our alignment, it makes our balance and strength training more efficient and more effective. I think we need to be stretching. I think we need to be working on joint mobility. I think we need to be working on stress reduction. We need to work on sleep. These things also have an effect on our bone density and our capacity, our bone's ability to model and remodel. So I think those are also key activities. What should we not do? Somebody messaged me about this the other day, and she's like, I'm a dancer. I've actually had a few different messages about this recently. For people who are super active and they have a real spinal mobility practice, people who are Pilates teachers are familiar with, like, it's important to maintain the mobility in our spine. Yoga teachers often have the same feeling. Do I really have to stop flexing, side bending, and rotating? So the answer is a really strong and determined it depends. It's the same as how we're going to move and scale our strength training and balance and agility and other movements depends on your current state of health. The guidelines say we want to limit, we're not avoiding, we're not eliminating completely, but we are limiting flexion, which is forward bending, lateral flexion, which is side bending, and rotation, which is twisting. We're mostly thinking about the flexion part because that's where your vertebrae are most vulnerable to fracture. And when you roll forward, particularly under certain circumstances, you're putting a lot of pressure on the fronts of the vertebrae, which might be fine, or it might not be, and of course you can't know until it's not. So the certain circumstances that apply across the board for all three of those, flexion, side bending, and rotation, we're trying to avoid sustained, like putting the bones in those positions for a long time, right? So curling, rolling over. The one that always occurs to me with this one is like doing a seated fold where you sit, here's my body, here's my legs, you roll forward and you hang out there. That's a lot of pressure to put on the fronts of your vertebrae and to hold. We want to avoid rapid and forceful motions in those directions, largely because we can't then control the way we're moving and we're inclined to go to end range. So we don't want to go to end range because that also is putting a lot of pressure on the bones, you know, in those various directions. And we want to avoid weighted. I got a message on Instagram from somebody at one point saying, does that mean Jefferson curls are not good for osteoporosis? That's where you stand on a box with a weight and you roll all the way forward past all the way down. No, Jefferson curls are not good for people with osteoporosis. So weighted could be that you like it could be an external weight, like you're holding a weight and rolling down big bags of groceries and rolling forward instead of hinging. We want to avoid that weighted roll. And it could be your body weight rolling up. So all of those fantastically lovely ab prep exercises in the Pilates practice, rolling up, rolling down, ab prep, hundreds, all those things, that's putting a lot of pressure on the fronts of the vertebrae. So I typically avoid them. I do move my spine. We want to maintain our mobility and our flexibility within those ranges. We're just trying to avoid going all the way harshly and strongly. So, you know, anybody who was in the masterclass recently, you know I love this example, but if you're a driver, you need to be able to check your blind spot. I know with the new cameras in cars that you don't have to, but it's a good idea to check your blind spot. And so you need to be able to twist, and we want this rotation where you're checking your blind spot to not be your maximum rotation. We don't want to go to end range. How do we not go to end range? Is we maintain a certain degree of pliability. Feels good in your back, feels good in your spine to move it. We're just staying in that more pliable range, so we're avoiding the sustained, forced, rapid, end range, weighted kind of thing. So that you maintain some mobility in your life, but your exercise is a really great place to be able to either move very intentionally and mindfully, or to take stuff out so that you're leaving space to do it in the rest of your life. Make sense, I hope? So that if we're limiting forward flexion, we're allowing some space for it in daily life when you're, when it's not possible to not do it. We were talking recently about picking grandbabies up out of cribs. Like, you can't get at the grandbaby if you don't bend over. So you're kind of making space in your life for that, but you're using as much hip action as you can. So that's kind of a starting point to how we want to move and how we want to limit moving. If you have a history of fractures, you're going to err on the side of caution, and you're going to use even less flexion, side bending, and rotation, particularly in exercise, making sure that you're being very intentional and mindful about the movements that you do. Depends on your degree of spine density, right? If you are just past osteopenia, statistically, people with osteopenia are as vulnerable to fractures as people with osteoporosis, largely because they tend to take less care about these movement limitations. So that's something to keep in mind. But for sure, if you have your lumbar spine is at -4, you're going to be a little bit more mindful about how you move your lumbar spine than someone who's at -2.5. So then let's talk a little bit about other conditions, right? So I have osteoporosis and arthritis, osteoporosis and pelvic floor condition, osteoporosis and back pain, osteoporosis and hip or knee pain. And this is not going to be, we've already been here for 20 minutes. This is not going to be a long discussion. This is going to be basically one sentence, because I would love to talk about these separately. But here's the deal. You do still want to keep moving, and you move in ranges that feel okay. So if you have knee pain, you do want to keep moving your knees, but you're going to experiment and explore what ranges are okay for you. So, we want to do squats. We love doing squats for our hips with our osteoporosis, and we're helping to work on our hip hinging. But when you come down, it hurts your knees. Well, instead of not squatting, figure out how far can you squat. Does this still feel, this doesn't feel good, but this is still okay? Awesome. Work in that range. Use the ranges that you have. Maybe your squat feels better if you're more turned out, or wider. Maybe your squat feels better if you're turned out. Play with, and that would apply for hips as well. Play with how you do your exercises to explore. Instead of thinking, I can't do a squat, think, well, I can't do a squat to that degree. I can do a squat that looks like this. So you're still getting the benefit of the exercise, but you're getting it in the window that's appropriate for you, for your body. The other thing to consider is if you have hip pain, back pain, knee pain, that you're doing more of the prep work. So this would not fall into what people would typically recognize as bone density work, but I would argue anything that's getting your body ready to move better is bone focused work. So you're working on, we had a very brief visit from the cat. You're working on mobility, so you're doing joint rotation to get some juice into the joints, staying in ranges that are appropriate for you, of course, right? You gradually will increase your capacity as you go. Rolling, like self-massage with yoga tune-up balls, is a great prep. So addressing the part of you that is sore before you start to do the exercise can be a really excellent strategy. And one of the things to remember is that movement is great for osteoporosis. Movement is also great for arthritis. So if your knee pain or hip pain is a result of arthritis, moving is not always comfortable, and we're not pushing to pain, but a little uncomfortable is okay because, and here we are back. We have the cat again. Lily the Wonder Kitten. It's a good thing to move. It is a good thing to move. When it comes to pelvic floor stuff, the big issue here is impact. Oh, that's part of the exercise that I didn't talk about, is impact. The evidence is small that impact alone is helpful. Impact seems to be best done in combination with weight-bearing exercise and strength training, but that's partly because there are very few studies that have been done on impact alone, on saying to people with bone density issues, let's do some impact work. So lots of the studies are done on people who are postmenopausal women, but they don't actually have osteoporosis. Some have osteoporosis, but no fractures. So the science is still slight. However, we don't need science to know that if you have a pelvic floor issue and you're jumping, that might not go well. So for you, if that's you, doing pelvic floor work is going to be a really great sort of co-contributor to being able to do lots of bone density helping work. But you would want, if you want to add impact, you would be going probably with heel bops, because that's going to just be less stressing for your system. And it's getting you that impact, so up to 50 bops a day in sets of 10 would be great. And interestingly, some of the work that's really fantastic for pelvic floor stuff, which focuses on hip mobility and hip hinging and really kind of separating out your pelvis and leg movement from your lumbar spine movement, is also super helpful for osteoporosis. So it's interesting how osteo and other things can frequently go together really well. So if you have questions about that stuff, pop it into the comments below when you watch this, and I will answer them as best as I can. And now, Lily, having brought you into my lap, I'm going to put you down again because I'm going to stand up. The next thing we're going to talk about very quickly is moving in everyday life. And this is a big one. We call this spine-sparing activities of daily living. And this is where your hip hinge just absolutely becomes the star of your life. So let's just top my camera up a little bit. When we want to avoid rounding our spines, so let's say this is the garbage and I'm about to scrape the plates, I could do this. So this would be flexion, right? This is forward bending of my spine. I can just as easily do this. Send my hips back, untuck my pelvis, and now I have a long spine. I'm still achieving my task. I'm coming down to pick stuff up. I'm getting hip hinging. So excellent for strengthening your glutes and hamstrings. Excellent for pelvic floor stuff. Gives you, great for people who tend to suffer with back pain. This is often a much better position than this one. Harder for sure if you have knee and hip stuff, but we're going to build to that as best we can. But this is your motion, right? You need to come and pick something up from the floor. You go for a kind of a split squat. If you need support, you put one hand on your knee and grab the thing that you need to grab. You can use a chair if you're not sure of your balance. You need to get stuff. You can carry something, if you have to clean up the whole floor and you need to be coming down to get things, you could bring a broom with you so that you have something to hang on to as you go. But this everyday life, we really want to play around with becoming aware of the places where we inadvertently flex our spines, particularly if we're picking stuff up and there's weight involved. You do want to try and find those places for hip hinging. And here's the deal. For many of us, hip hinging is challenging because we don't have the mobility in our hips and the strength in our glutes and hamstrings to sustain that position. So this is where it really makes a lot of sense to be working on mobility, to be working on awareness, to be working on, that capacity for not just exercise strength, but also daily life strength. And my suspicion is that it's really helpful to work on that stuff every day. It's very hard to measure in a scientific experiment, but it's going to be helpful to be working on that, not only in the sense of avoiding extra pressure on our spines, which may or may not lead to fractures, but also just it's better movement. Being able to get up and down from the floor is really important. And again, if you have hip stuff and if you have knee stuff and difficulty getting up and down from the floor, I totally recognize that that is a thing. But instead of just not getting up and down from the floor anymore, I would suggest bring the floor up to you. So you start with really intentionally working on, so this would be a functional exercise. Remember I was saying we want to work on functional exercises, a couple of times a week. This one you can do every day. Just be mindful about getting up and down from a chair. So you're not using the arm of the chair and here we go. Work on using your muscles to get you up and down. And when that feels like that's pretty easy, but you still know that getting up and down from the floor takes 48 different steps of organization. You make the floor higher. Okay, I'm going to come down to the floor. But you bring the floor up. And no, not everybody is going to squat to the floor. So maybe what you're doing is you're bringing yourself up and you're going into this one step back, long spine, hinging, come down, multiple turns, use your hands, right? Oh, here I am, I'm pretty close to the floor. And you gradually get it so that you can get up and down from the floor. Partly because that's excellent physical work. Getting up and down from the floor a bunch of times is a great workout. Give it a try. But the other thing is, and this is almost like a psychological thing, osteoporosis can feel very disempowering. And knowing that you have the strength and the agility and the mobility and the capacity to manage, you do. Hi, Lotta. Hello. Nice to see you, Lotta. For back strengthening. Okay, so hang on just a second. Yes, getting up and down from the floor as a preschool teacher, you are going to get up and down a ton, and that's super, super helpful. And Karen, I will answer that in just a moment. So here's one of the things that happens in life. Every now and then, to many people, not everybody, we fall. It happens. So, and it's usually really embarrassing. So there you are, you're down on the ground. Isn't it better to know that if you fall, you can just get back up? Instead of you fall, it's embarrassing, you have this bone density thing, so you're probably kind of freaked out about the falling, and you can't get back up on your own. So being able to get up and down is not just a physically beneficial thing. I think it is also like a heart and soul, I am a functional person. Psychological support when we have this condition that sometimes makes us feel really fragile. So back exercises specifically, I have a 5-day kind of my favorite exercises free guide that's got some back exercises in it. I don't actually have one specifically like a whole series of back things. There are back exercises on YouTube. I'll put my YouTube channel in the comments below. And I have, it's interesting. Back work is super important, but my back stuff tends to be kind of spread everywhere. And asking that question makes me think I need to do a little back sequence. YouTube is probably going to be the best place to find that stuff. So I think probably I'll do, again, my apologies for having taken half an hour to get myself organized to get here. I think I have all of my settings reorganized. I don't know why they all disappeared. And I'll do another live next week, and we'll maybe dive a little bit deeper into really great everyday movements. One of the things I really want to talk about is walking. which everybody's doctor says, oh, you have osteoporosis, you should go and walk. And that's not necessarily the best and most effective use of your time and your energy. But we can also make walking more effective and better for our bones, depending on how we do it. I wanted to finish quickly by saying, if you are interested in more work that specifically addresses extra issues, I have a pelvic floor online on-demand mini pelvic floor course and an online on-demand course about hips and knees, kind of in a whole body movement context. And I'll share the links to both of those down below because they can be really useful, not only for pelvic floor, hips, and knees, but also the moves in them are going to be useful for the rest of your body. And for those of you who don't know, I have an online small group coaching program for osteoporosis, and I will share the link for that as well. We do have space for a couple more people right now, so if you're interested, let me know. And if you would like to talk about where you are in your journey, there's a lot of different ways to work with me. I have online group classes through my studio, and I have my program and the online stuff. So if you're like, I don't know what would be right for me, we can also book a call. I do like a free mentorship call where I can sort of help you figure out, based on where you are and what your needs are, how I can help you best, or who I could refer you to for what you need the most. So I think next week, let's talk about walking. Maybe next week, might be the week after. And Lotta and Karen, lovely to see you here. And anybody else who's watching later, as I said, comments down below. I will be answering them later. I will put I'll post a bunch of links that you can access in the comment. And sorry I was late. Bye. Karen or Lotta, do either of you have any extra additional questions before I bop out? Yes, balance and confidence, so important. And you are so welcome. Yeah, the mentoring call is nice. It gives us a chance to actually chat personally. Osteoporosis is complicated, and it's one of the things that there's so often is this like, ooh, let's just have a one answer. And hi Bonnie, like, where's the silver bullet? And we don't get a silver bullet. We don't get a simple answer, and it's not the same for everybody. So yeah, sometimes the mentorship call is a nice way to dive into exactly what's helpful and what I can offer you best. All right, take it easy. I'll see you next time.